Hello, and thank you for pressing play on today's episode of Stand Up. I've got the brilliant David Rothkopf joining me again today, and it does not disappoint. We had a great conversation and actually several laughs as well. I think you're going to like it. And that is coming right up. I'm foregoing the first two segments, the good stuff and the news, because last night was a bit of a shit show and I didn't get to put it all together for you. More on that later, but I think you're going to like my conversation with Rothkopf. Also, do want to mention, and I will every day, PODJAM 2 is on. Get your tickets. They are available. We have a great lineup of your favorite guests joining us, including Eric Siegel, Tim Wise, Mara Quint, Aaron Carroll, J.L. Covan, Ophira Eisenberg, and more. So go get your tickets. There's a link in today and every day's show notes. Hope to see you in Vegas, March 28th through 30th. It's going to be awesome. But right now, it's time to get to my conversation with David Rothkopf. You should subscribe to his Substack, Need to Know, get his books, listen to Deep State Radio, which has such great guests and programming, including Greg Sargent's new show, and follow David on Blue Sky. We'll get right back to the regular format. Sorry, I had to forego it today, but there'll be days like this, won't there? Let's do it right now. David Rothkopf. Rothkopf, I've missed you. It's been too long, and then I realized you're not even on Twitter anymore. You're blue skying, and you say you're enjoying it there. You're even more impactful there, you think? Hi.
I think so. Look, I had 300,000 followers on Twitter, and I've been on Blue Sky for a week, and I have 35,000. I don't know what it is, approaching 40,000, I think. So I'm way behind. But I tell you one thing. Twitter, they're throttling, they're hiding, they're bullshitting, they're promoting white supremacists and stuff like that. And I noticed on my Substack, they give you a little tally. Zero. Promoting it on Twitter, zero people came to the Substack from Twitter. And I notice when I promote articles and things, Twitter does not drive anything. But Substack does, this does, Blue Sky does. So I'd like to have 300,000. I hope you're millions of listeners will all follow me on Blue Sky so that I can, get back up to my lofty heights. But these other places are a lot more effective, and the people are nicer. They're all like, going to the planet Pete Dominick. Everybody's nice like Pete Dominick. Everybody's smart like Pete Dominick.
It's got almost a small town, local community feel in that, even though people are strangers. You don't feel like if you accidentally bumped into them, they'd call you the N-word, cuck, and 7 other things.
No, it's true. But yet there are a few of those. And so my twitchy blocking finger does get used occasionally, and I like that. I feel strong. I've erased you.
All right. So lots of specific questions I wanted to ask you. You've been writing some great stuff over at the Substack and posting on Blue Sky. Everybody's got to follow him. 39.3 thousand followers already.
After 8 days. Look at that.
You just got on it 8 days ago.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. I have 3.1 thousand.
But your listeners are so loyal.
Really disappointing. My social media game it's just so disappointing. It really has been forever. I'm very inconsistent. I post, I don't post.
No, you got to post. You got to post a lot. Just even repost. Just do stuff. The nice thing about Blue Sky, by the way, is that they have those starter packs. So if you want a bunch of people who write about politics or write about AI or you just click right there and you get 20 of them. My first goal with Blue Sky was to beef up the feed so that I was actually getting the news that I wanted. Right. And that's happened pretty quickly because those starter packs really allow you to get up to speed fast.
Now, do you know anything about the ownership, creation, management of this platform? I realize we're all touting it and talking about it, but I really haven't looked that much into it yet.
I don't know. There was some rumor that Jack Dorsey, the guy who founded Twitter, was involved. There were a bunch of people from Twitter who were involved. I know that. But it's a fairly small operation. And Threads is what? Meta, right? It's half Meta. It's Met. See what I did there?
Yeah, I'm on there too, though.
It's not that great. And of course, Mastodon is just ridiculous because it's all these nodes and they don't connect. So it was just hard. The Blue Sky, if you've been using Twitter, you go over to Blue Sky and it's the same thing, except nice people. So life's too short. Life's too short to have a bad social media experience, Pete.
Life is too short also to shut it all down based on the election. You've seemingly come out with some real optimism, some upbeat takes, but of course you're always the realist as well, so we can talk about it all, and we should. I've loved reading your thoughts on everything from foreign policy, national security, domestic politics, economy, and more. But how are you generally feeling? The sky is not falling, even though we've got some pretty crazy stuff happening. How are you looking at it generally, broadly first?
Broadly, look, it was a very bad result in terms of the election from the presidential race. Terrible mistake. If I had felt angry and I felt sad, the biggest thing I felt was cognitive dissonance. I was like, wait a minute, this guy's terrible. We know he's terrible. He's a criminal. He's a big threat. He was a lousy president. She's good. Her administration with Biden did a lot of good stuff. It shouldn't even be a contest. Yeah. And yet, slightly more people voted for him than for her. That's my second point. This was not a mandate. This was not a landslide. All this bullshit that the Democrats got it entirely wrong and we need to be more like the Republicans and everybody's got to be on Joe Rogan. Complete nonsense, right? First of all, he did not get a majority of the voters. Again, he's been in 3 presidential elections. He's never won the majority of the voters. He's been tracked on polls for 9 years. He's never had a majority support. He is a minority president supported by a minority of Americans. Secondly, the Democrats lost by 237,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Did they lose? Yes, they did. Were there 10 million votes left on the table that you wished would have hoped turn out? Yes, they were. But I think the big thing in the election was there was a big anti-incumbency bias in developed nations, and 10 developed nations that had big elections, incumbents lost. Secondly, I think that the campaign was only 15 weeks long. Had Biden dropped out a year before, as he should have, she would have done better. The campaign made some mistakes in terms of targeting groups. They relied too much on TV. They made some mistakes in getting our group out. But a bunch of Democrats won in the Senate. The margin in the House is very narrow. This is not the end of the world. Then I turn on TV and they're like, the Democrats really, they've got to all take a page out of Trump's book. They've got to have bad hair. And they've got to say stupid shit. And because that's the only way to really connect with real Americans. Because Democrats are elitists. That's bullshit. There were 10 million people who voted for Biden who didn't vote for her. Democrats need to figure out how to get their own people to vote. If they do, they will win every single time. And we're going to start that again in 2026 because it tends to be the out-of-power party does well in the midterms. And we'll get back the House, and Hakeem Jeffries will be the Speaker of the House. And there are a lot of other guardrails. I'll stop here. But there are a lot of other guardrails on Trump. It's not just he's going to try to get rid of as many of them as he can. But the business community doesn't want tariffs, and they don't want rioting in the streets, and they don't want moms being dragged out of their homes. Small businesses don't want it. Big businesses don't want it. The Republican districts, you think that if a third of the budget gets cut by Elon Musk, which he can't do, by the way, or the Congress wants to go along with him on it, most of the money goes to red districts. Most of the money from the federal government. So who's going to pay the bigger price? Red district. And so there are going to be a bunch of Republicans. And remember, we only need 4 in the Senate. We only need 3 in the House who are going to say, no mas, not in my district. And Democrats plus X is a majority. And there are a lot of Trump proposals that are going to give you Democrats plus X. And that's a strategy.
It's one strategy, and it could very well play out that way as a result of much everything you just said. Let's talk about in the kind of immediate future here in the transition period. It's like a reality show. It's a bit every day. Who's he going to choose? What person? What unqualified person? One of the things I think people don't point to enough in the first administration and in this administration as well is he appoints people to run agencies and departments that should be being regulated, or the rest of their career, they were being regulated by that agency or that department. It's like that's why I always joke about in charge of EPA, he's put an actual bag of coal. In charge of the ATF, it's a gun. Like he puts the actual lobbyists in charge of the agency so they can disable it, disarm it, deregulate it.
That's Elon's goal, right? Elon's goal is to make more money. It's to make more money. It's to get rid of the things that hurt his companies and to double down on the contracts that help his companies. And I think a lot of these people are playing that game. I think one of the things that should make us optimistic is that these are kleptocrats. They're more kleptocratic than they are autocratic. They pose a threat to our democracy. I've been saying that for a long time, and I still believe it. But if they're given a chance to spend an hour stealing money from us or an hour taking our vote, they'll steal the money. And that's what they're focused on. And, particularly now that Trump is not being prosecuted for anything. And then there are all these other guardrails, and it's really going to be hard for them to do a lot of the stuff that they want. Now, should Pete Hegseth be the Secretary of Defense? That's ridiculous. He's a white supremacist. He's a sex abuser, allegedly. And on top of that, and more important than that in a lot of respects, he's never managed anything, and it's the largest organization in the world. He has no defense policy experience, and it's the national defense. And you could make the same arguments about Tulsi Gabbard, the same about RFK Jr., the same about Mehmet Oz. These people don't belong in these places.
I think the one thing you didn't say about Hegseth, and I feel like this is getting, I know you've talked about it, but undercovered, he seems to follow an absolutely fucking crazy, radical, extremist form of Christian nationalism and to believe in the things that he believes and to want to advocate for the prophecy that he believes in. He should be nowhere near anything. He got kicked out of his National Guard unit because he was fucking nuts.
He's nuts. I was sitting at a downtown DC watering hole this morning, where the elite meet to eat.
Where you guys hang out, leather bound books and the such.
Yeah, it was the breakfast room at the Four Seasons Hotel, and there was a guy at the next table, and he was like, Hegseth he's a good guy. He likes America. He likes the troops, and he's very smart. This was a couple of Republicans talking. And I was like, oh, my God, but that, these people are their own undoing. Yesterday, also at the Four Seasons breakfast room, the guy at a different next table said to somebody on the phone, it was clearly a reporter. He was like, we think poor people should be taken care of. They need money. They got to eat. Said, but let me tell you something. Under us, they're going to have to work for it because they need to work if they're going to get there. And I was like, okay, that's great. Have at it, guys. Do what you're going to do. Try to cut Medicare. Try to cut Social Security. Try to cut all these programs because people have been trying for 50 years. And you know why they can't do it? Because people want those programs. Yeah,
and they see them go away. Now, more than ever, it seems the thing that matters the most, that people don't pay close attention to politics the way we do and read and write and talk the way that we do. And they only know that a thing's happening if it got taken away or if it got built, which arguably people say Democrats didn't do a good enough job touting that they build this. I don't know about that, but if I come down there, would you take me to the Four Seasons, or or if I walked in, would you act like you didn't know me because I'm riffraff?
No, I would take you there because I've been told I'm a Democrat, and as a Democrat, what I'm not doing is meeting the riffraff enough, and that the future of the Democratic Party relies on hanging out with more riffraff, and so by bringing you there, I would all of a sudden look incredibly woke 2.0.
Good. Because I have a nice shirt and slacks and some whatever shoes.
So there, most of the sports teams stay at the Four Seasons.
Oh,
they always come down in sweats.
I could get mistaken as a kicker.
Yeah, these days there's a lot of basketball teams there, and you wouldn't be mistaken because they're very tall people.
Maybe as their accountant. Okay, so what does it mean to? What can they? Yes,
this is my friend Pete. He's the accountant for the Phoenix Suns. They're here in town.
Hey guys, what do you think? Huh? Yeah. MAGA. All right, up high. Let's do it. Let's remake it. Let's deconstruct the administrative state. What does that mean, Mr. Deep State Radio? What does it mean? What can they do? That sounds very disconcerting. I want to be in contact with as many people inside the federal government as possible. I know you are. What is it? What does this mean? What is realistically going to happen? This is Steve Bannon's.
Yeah, look, they're going to try to fire a bunch of people. First of all, a lot of them they can't fire unless they want a lot of lawsuits. There'll be a lot of lawsuits. Then they'll discover that by firing these people and having them all go to lawsuits, nothing's going to get done because the government's going to cease to function. And that's going to be a problem because there are a lot of services that people depend on. And a lot of the things they want to do and shut down actually requires the Congress to go along with it. But I'll just go back to this point about shutting down a third of the government. Musk keeps saying he wants to cut $2 trillion out of the budget. You know what that'll do? It'll cause a depression. But let's set that aside, okay? If he doesn't have power to do it, of course, Congress does. But $2 trillion, third of the federal budget, would mean you had to cut every single discretionary spending program in the U.S. government except defense. Every single one. And a chunk of defense or a chunk of entitlements. Can't be done. The Congress they'll cut some things. But you want to know something? The last time around, I'm going to cut the National Endowment for the Arts, which has got some piddling budget that's less than a fighter plane. And some guy in his district says, one of my big fundraisers runs the downtown arts center, or I did a fundraiser there, and he doesn't want them to cut it. And so some congressman blocks it. And that's why all this stuff stays there, because people want these things. If they want to balance the budget, and I think they should balance the budget, how about having billionaires pay their taxes?
We're not going to see any increases on taxes of wealthy people under a Republican administration.
No.
The only thing they did the last time, the only important piece of legislation, impactful piece of legislation, was a tax cut for 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. They were wildly
No, absolutely. And you want to know why that was the only thing they did? Because it's the only thing they care about. Because it's a little bit of a scam, right? The rich guys say, what do we have to say to the poor guys to rig the government in our favor? And the poor guys say, say that you don't like people of color. And then they say, okay, we'll say that. And then they come in and they cut their taxes, they cut regulations, they get rid of things that cost them money so that they can have more money and inequality can grow. And that's what they want. And it's, our system, and I'm pretty optimistic about a bunch of things, except that at our core, our system is already not democratic because 1% of the American people own more wealth than the bottom 90%. To say that is a democracy, when those people have all the assets to spend all that they want, electing whomever they want, they have much more say in the election because it's all about the money, because they're the ones that can pick the candidates and make them possible. It's not a democracy.
It's always been something we've talked about for a long time, wealth inequality and tax policy. Over the years, I've talked with so many different economists, as from Joseph Stiglitz to Jeffrey Sachs to Dean Baker and so many more. Obviously, Bernie Sanders and so many politicians have run on these ideas, wealth inequality. Remember the 99% movement and so on. So it's only gotten worse, and the Supreme Court, Citizens United has allowed so much of that money to flow into elections and so on. But it seems now it's different because now it seems a lot more closer to a Russian-style oligarchy than what we had before. With Trump in charge, it's a different situation. That wealth inequality that you talked about is now under so much more control. Is there a major difference now with it? Are you going to
It's increasing. The inequality is increasing. The wealth is being more concentrated. And if you deregulate AI or don't regulate it and deregulate more businesses and cut the taxes of the rich, it's going to get more concentrated. And that's what they want. And it'll be an oligarchy. It'll be an aristocracy. It'll be precisely the kind of system of government that our country was established to fight against. And this is what we have to address. Perversely, the Republicans manage to say the reason our system is broken this way is the elites in the Democratic Party. And when they say elites, what do they mean? They mean college professors, and they mean newspaper columnists. And they don't mean those people aren't the elites. The elites are the billionaires that are in the Trump cabinet. They're like 7 billionaires in the Trump cabinet. The elites are the billionaires that fund Trump. Yeah. But somehow they've managed to persuade 75 million suckers that the real elites are an associate professor of English literature at Lafayette College. You couldn't be less elite than that. But that's what, there's somebody out there.
That guy is actually booked on this show. Professor Jefferson, I am so sorry. He's in the green room.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean Lafayette, Lehigh. But, the
elites are the billionaires and the oligarchs that are currently in charge of the federal government, the Department of Defense.
The amazing thing is the oligarch party has somehow managed to persuade just enough Americans that it's not us, it's them. And that Donald Trump, a billionaire, is the answer to this system being screwed up this way.
Yeah, not only a man whose wealth is all begotten through inheritance and lies and failure and corruption and not paying people. You can make a lot of money if you don't pay people that do work for you. So let me ask you about what we're supposed to do. You've written a piece, Breathe, Prepare, Resist. I'm hearing all kinds of interesting conversations and criticisms of what we did the first Trump administration and what we're going to do during this criminal Trump administration differently, and what works and what doesn't work. What conclusions have you come to this early on?
First of all, by the way, I just want to remind everybody who may have missed earlier episodes that I was absolutely certain Kamala Harris would win. By all means, take my analysis with a grain of salt, because I was completely wrong. But having said that, I nonetheless, upon some reflection, think that what we need to do is not be afraid of everything Trump could do or react to our nightmares. We need to see what he is actually doing and then figure out what the strategy is for stopping that. In the case of he's going to want to appoint a bunch of judges, Democrats can block that in the Congress using blue slips and other kinds of things in the same way that Republicans did. He's going to want to do these big draconian cuts in the budget. But as we just said, we all have, there are coalitions that can be brought together to stop these things. And it's going to conclude some Republicans and some businesses and some people on Wall Street. And in each one of these cases, we need to figure out how that is and coolly put together the ad hoc coalition and do it. We need to create communications mechanisms to remind people on a daily basis, to communicate with them, to see how they feel about it as well. Yes. But that Trump is actually screwing them on a daily basis. To just drive home the message. You thought he was going to help you. He's not helping you. How does that feel? And create a real dialogue around that using new media, social media, not traditional talk at you media. And that's another thing we can do. We need to focus on 2026 and winning back the House, because that's going to be a bit. And by the way, I was talking to Norm Ornstein, who hosts one of our podcasts.
Yeah, Norm's smart. I love Norm.
He's a Congress whisperer. And he was saying, look, the Republican majority in the Congress right now, because Trump is picking 3 people who are going to leave Congress, is going to be like 2 people. So at some point, 2 people aren't going to show up. And the Democrats are going to be in the majority. And the Democrats should, whenever that is the thing, immediately kick Mike Johnson out, make Hakeem Jeffries the speaker, and pass shit. They need to do guerrilla.
That's about to happen in this current lame duck Congress, that there's going to be 2 Congress. The Democrats are going to have the majority, and that he thinks they should.
Well, I'm saying it could happen. What he's saying is we need to be prepared because the margins are razor thin. And it's possible somebody gets sick, somebody dies, somebody gets indicted, some other kind of thing happens, and all of a sudden the margin is gone. Take advantage of the situation. In other words, we need to be resourceful resistors, use the tools at our disposal in whatever way, whatever the threat we see is calls for.
I feel like Democrats won't be that cutthroat in the House or the Senate. It feels like we're not ready to be that.
Well, we certainly aren't. Chuck Schumer's, hey, I've got a great idea. If you let us have these district judgeships, then we'll let you have the Circuit Court of Appeals, the higher level of judgeships. And he cut a deal where he gave 4 of those. The Republicans would never do that. They passed Amy Coney Barrett as a Supreme Court justice in 1 hour and 25 minutes over lunch one day.
He must have done it for a good reason.
Yeah. Get along, go along. It's like Democrats need to blow shit up. I'm all for scorched earth Democrats.
Really? I don't know what that looks like.
It looks like Republicans have looked for a long time. Use the tools available to you. Stop worrying about we can't do that. It'll destroy the norms of the Senate. You go, wait a minute. The Republicans have been doing that for years. Remember Supreme Court Justice Merrick Garland? Jesus Christ. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if Merrick Garland had ended up on the Supreme Court and we could have had a real attorney general for the past 4 years and Trump wouldn't have actually been the candidate because he'd be someplace else?
So many moments, so many pivotal moments over the last 10 years, 20 years that
24 years. Bush v. Gore.
9/11. Yeah.
But Bush v. Gore.
Election-wise, I shouldn't have said 9/11. That was the thing that was always going to, no matter what happened. But yeah, Bush v. Gore, obviously, would have such a different, I don't know. Who knows? It's not worth just really thinking about it. The near present and near future are.
How many moments in your life? Like you're like, if I had only ordered this, I wouldn't have spilled that on my shirt and she wouldn't have walked away in the middle of the day. And you spend a lot of time going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. It's ruined my life. And these things are much bigger than that, Pete. They're much bigger.
To take the metaphor, by the way, all those things for me were injuries, showing off 5 serious injuries at least that I can remember trying to show off for women throughout my life.
Dates? Really?
Like just while flirting one time at a ski resort, one time on a hiking trail, one time.
And what'd you do? Fall off a cliff? Or you were that guy?
Oh, God, there's so many. One time I just jumped over this girl when I had my snowboard on and I had my back foot out of my board. I just leapt over and the board came up and hit me in the face so hard that the next 3 weeks, my eye was so swollen, my eye was shut. So my friends in high school were calling me Chunk from the Goonies. That was one. Do you want me to go on?
Yes. Although, frankly, the image I had was you snowboarding over a girl and decapitating her. So this is not as bad. As
she was lying. She was she had fallen and I went up to her and tried to jump over her. Look at me jumping over you. Boom.
And she had fallen and you thought that was the moment to make fun of her?
No, I wasn't making fun. I was coming over her to help her, but I go, let me just jump over with my board. I was showing off, trying to be chivalristic. Is that a word? And no. I nailed my face with my own snowboard. And the next few weeks were the hardest part, where all my friends.
You are a smooth bastard.
Oh, God, there's so many more. I could do an hour-long comedy show just talking about them. But all of those things that did happen, you could argue there were good outcomes as a result. And I think that's what you're doing. And one of the pieces I read of yours, like, shit is going to fall off and break off. There's going to be pain. But if we look ahead in 4 years, you went to millennium. You talked about time and measuring time and how much can change. And I liked your larger perspective of it, is what I'm trying to say.
Look, first of all, as I said at the beginning, secular trends tend to be more important than the ones the political consultants say are important. And this was an anti-incumbent year in developed countries. A lot of it had to do with COVID. One of the trends we know is that the out party tends to do well in midterm elections. And we've seen that in a number of times in this century. And so Democrats probably should do pretty well in 2026. So long as we keep having elections, and by the way, it's hard to stop us from having elections. They'll try. States control elections. So long as we keep having elections, but when we get to 2028, Trump can't run again. And Trump's not going to give a shit about who his successor is. And I know this because Trump's Trump and presidents are narcissistic. And Obama didn't care who his successor was, and Clinton didn't care who his successor was. They just won't go and do the heavy lifting for their successors. And 4 years of Trump is bound to be bad for America, and people are going to know it. So I think the Democrats have a pretty good chance to win the presidency then. Do I think, by the way, am I like crazy, rosy-eyed, Democrats are going to win back the Senate? Seems really unlikely, unless Trump does something super bad.
Right.
But can they win back the House, and can they win back the White House? And that's a pretty good thing. But here's something else to keep in mind. Government isn't our whole lives. We lead our lives. We determine where we live, who we live with, what do we do, all that kind of thing. And while we need to be vigilant to keep the government from cutting away vital rights that we've got, we need to care about that. We've lived through 4 years of Trump before.
Yeah.
We've had good lives. We've done good things while that was happening. And so there's a tendency, if you're on like cable news or some of the shows that you or I've done over the course of our lives, people are like, it's all politics. It's not. And that should be of some comfort to people.
Yeah. And I'm doing a lot more outside of that now as a result of thinking the same.
Teaching snowboarding now? Is that what it is?
Yeah, over a podcast.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Spending more time snowboarding. How about that? But I wanted to just ask you one last question about just geopolitics, foreign policy, national security. That's really hard to predict and anybody's best guess. But just what are your kind of concerns right now vis-a-vis China, obviously the Middle East, Russia?
Look, there's
what do you want to say?
Madagascar. There's a lot of.
Well, just focus on Madagascar.
It was a cartoon.
The ambassador is probably one of your friends from the fucking Four Seasons or something.
We
probably went to camp with him or something.
Yeah, summer.
That was just subtly
Camp Skoglund in Maine.
It was subtly anti-Semitic.
Yeah, that's great. You anti-Semites are always subtle.
We're not. Not always.
We're on our guard. Anyway, love the thing. Trump's attitude towards Ukraine is dangerous. Trump's attitude towards Putin is dangerous. If Putin gets a settlement in Ukraine that he sees as a victory and that entices him to go harder at NATO, and Trump is pulling out of NATO and weakening it, very dangerous. I think, however, there are a couple of Republicans in the Senate who will resist that, and therefore he may have a harder time doing what he wants to do on that. I think in Gaza and the Palestinian territories more broadly, but I think Netanyahu is going to start settling northern Gaza. He's going to annex the West Bank. I think there is a better than zero chance, probably better than 25% chance, that at the end of these 4 years, there are no Palestinian territories. They're trying to move the Palestinians someplace else because that's been his objective all along. Might Trump provoke a conflict with Iran? He might. Might he provoke one with China? I don't think he wants to do that. It's not in his interest. And he's got people around him, even though he's got all these China hawks around him. You think Elon Musk wants to get into a disastrous conflict with China? He's got interest there. You think Howard Lutnick wants to? He's got interest there. There are a lot of people in and around Trump who aren't going to want that. And we've got to keep an eye on it because it's obviously a volatile situation. The one thing we know, he's definitely not going to do what we need to do on global warming and the climate crisis.
Right.
He's going to make that worse. That's very bad. He's probably not going to do what we need to do to ensure that the AI revolution is safe. And that could be a problem, and a large-scale problem. And all I can say, based on the administration he's talking about right now, God help us if there's a pandemic. Because RFK Jr. and Mehmet Oz and these guys, and Trump is like, his central identity is no vaccines, no masks, no science. That was our mistake the last time. Millions of people would die. Millions of people. So that's bad. Will our alliances be weaker at the end of these 4 years? Yeah, that's a problem. But some of that stuff can be reversed when we are in the first year of the Harris-Whitmer co-presidency.
I like it. That sounds interesting. Well, sir, we covered a lot, and I appreciate it. It's great to talk to you. I've been reading you. I'm glad you're over on the Blue Sky. Hope everybody follows you over there and gets a paid subscription to your Substack. And as always, listens to Deep State Radio, where you've got the very best guests joining you. They're highly endorsed. And, of course, Greg Sargent, part of the network, brings you a tremendous amount of credibility. I was listening to him talk to James Carville.
Speaking of no credibility, Greg has a lot of credibility. James Carville, not so much. But we try to get good guests. And
I really liked the conversation. Carville was saying, I don't know about a million things, but he had some questions, and it was interesting. I actually liked it, but I like everything Greg touches, and so I'm happy that's in your umbrella. He's doing good. Great stuff.
Thank you very much. I like what you're doing here, and I really want to come back for more of your dating disaster stories.
Oh, yeah. I was on a moving boat. It was about 35 miles an hour. And I just decided to get up and jump off the boat while it was going like 30 miles an hour. And I was not a physics. The body in motion continues to move in motion unless you jump into water. And my head almost flew off. And I felt my neck snap, and I was like wondering if I could still feel I thought I was paralyzed because it hurt so bad. And they all came back, and they're like, why did you do that? And I was like, They're like, why did you jump off? I was like, just get me on. I think my neck is broken.
It's not funny.
Bunch of girls on a boat that remained my friend, just in my friend zone, surprisingly.
Surprisingly. Because they didn't have the strong impulse to mate with somebody who had little common sense, that much self-destructive impulse. Weird, huh?
I have 10 more, but we got to go. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
David Rothkopf. We love him. Wasn't that great? Wasn't he great? He's always great. Go subscribe to his Substack, Need to Know. Listen to Deep State Radio. Follow him on Blue Sky and everywhere else. And that is it. I'll be back with our regularly formatted show. Looks like I'll have Wajid Ali back joining me on tomorrow's show. Look forward to seeing you on the Discord platform. Reach out anytime at standupwithpete@gmail.com. John Carroll writes and performs all of our music. We love him and hope that he will be in Vegas with us as well. I forgot to mention him earlier. Let's do it. Take it away, John.
Boy, you better stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up on your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got